also have Victoria and Yuri join us on stage.
Victoria Top, the editor.
As a reminder, as you can see, the film is eligible for the Audience Award, so if you loved it, you can go using the QR code on the screen. But with that, we'll turn to Q&A. We're really lucky to have so many team members here tonight. Of course, Director Todd Nakamura, producer Yuri Chung, and editor Victoria Chalk. And maybe we can start, or did you want to go ahead?
I just want, my dad really likes trophies, so you can call that.
Maybe since now that the audience has seen the film, Tad, would you be willing to say a little bit about how your ideas about fatherhood and parenting have changed in the course of making the film?
I think just, again, I just really want to thank all of you for being here. Thank everyone else in the other audience, other theaters coming. I think just watching the film with all of you, just really grateful to have this moment. I mean, again, to be opening night, to have all of you here, so many family, friends who've known me for so long. I mean, it's something, it's an opportunity that most people don't get. So I really, I don't take that for granted. I think to answer your question, with that, I really want to, I think as a parent now, all we want to do is allow our kids to live out their dreams. And by me being here in front of you, opening night with this film, I know my parents are very, very grateful to all of you for allowing me to live out my dreams. So I think, again, now as a parent myself, I do see things from a different angle, and that is a lot more gratitude. Because also, I think, as much as, also I know as a parent how much your kids listen and don't listen to you. And so I think it really took spaces away from the house, spaces away from my parents, for me to really learn on my own, or from instant. And I do think, people like Spencer, people like Dawn, spaces like Cam, and also I think a lot of people, I just want to recognize there's a lot of people in the audience that I've grown up with, that they've, from high school to college, and I just really want to thank all of you, because you've continued to inspire me as artists, and now a lot of us are, married or have children, and I think it just feels really good to have a community, both in LA but also in the Bay, and I just want to thank all of you.
I also want to open it for Yuri and Victoria. Could you share a bit about how you got involved in the project?
I'm one of the hundreds of students taught by Bob at UCLA over 20 years ago now, and Tad was my TA, weirdly. So we sort of I guess grown up together, making films kind of parallel and intersecting over the decades. And Tad may talk about this, but this obviously is a difficult film for lots of reasons, and I think he approached me saying, do you want to produce this? And I was like, yeah, of course. I don't think I really understood what I was saying yes to, and I don't know that Tad understood what he was saying yes to when he asked his dad to make the film. So it is very full circle and surreal to be part of it, and we had our LA premiere last weekend, and Bob was able to come, and it just was it was very this is your life for most of us. My whole life in LA and the career that I have was, Bob and Tad are a big part of that, but Grace Louise here, she's one of the first people to give me the opportunity to make feature films. Don Young also, hugely important to just me being on the stage with you. So like, there's a lot of emotions. But yeah, I mean, I think it didn't occur to me to become a filmmaker until I took Bob's class, and so this is all like very weird.
We were joking about this the other day, that I basically came on because I worked previously with Yuri, and Tad gave me a hard drive, and it had over 10,000 archival photos on it, 7 years of production footage, everything his dad had ever shot at home on home camera, all his films, all of Tad's films, and I said yes, not knowing what was on the hard drive until we looked, but just so grateful for the opportunity, and I felt like, even though I didn't get to take Bob's class at UCLA, I have so many friends who did, and I think, you know, working on this film with Tad and listening to Bob's hours and hours of interviews, like, I feel like I did take that class with everyone, and I think, like, as a filmmaker and as filmmakers together, I think this was a very unique opportunity for all of us. And I think we all grew on this film, working together through the like very difficult periods in the edit, especially, but also through the moments of joy, especially like when we get to show it to people and realizing that it has, there's like an entryway in the film for everyone, and I think it really it can move people from all backgrounds.
Thank you. Yeah, I really liked how the film kind of shows film as a family affair. You talk about sort of going on shoots that are disguised as family vacations, and then you sort of like recreate that by bringing the camera into family spaces and into the car with your dad. And I'm wondering if all of y'all could talk through how y'all work through the tension between like what is private and personal, and kind of what is maybe a public story.
Yeah, well, I think that was a constant struggle through the process of making the film is when to put the camera down and when to keep on shooting. And I honestly think this journey continues. So that's why all of you tonight, you are all part of my ongoing journey. Because I think what I didn't realize, making the film, right, like we talked about in the car, is like, well, do I want to be present? Do I want to, just be there as a son? Or do I want to shoot it? And you obviously know what my dad's answer is. But even screening the film now and taking it on the road, I still have that dilemma because, in a way, my character, this film, part of this film was about me trying to learn how to be a good son and a good father. And in order for me to come up here to take it across the country, I have to leave my dad and I have to leave my kids. And so, but at the same time, I think traveling around and seeing, seeing my old friends, his old friends, it's just a reminder of, why we made this, who we made it for, and I think it continues to be a journey. So I really appreciate all of you being here because it was extremely hard, but tonight, moments like this make it all worth it. But I do want to say that for Yuri and Vic and Lou, Ursula, Lailani, so many other people in the audience. This was Spencer. This was the first time I kind of was on my own. I didn't have my dad to really lean on, and I think this is what community is for, right? Is that when you're in a time of need, when you're dependent on other people, or the person that you're dependent on can no longer kind of help you as much as you would like, that's when your friends really come and support you. Because like Yuri said, Yuri's probably one of 7 people from our producer, archival producer, to even the musician who did the score, Miles Senzaki, to the camera people. They were all my dad's students. So not only were they my friends that I've grown up with, but they were also my dad's students. So for everyone, this was more than just a film. And I think, in a way, I think you could really feel that.
All good. I also kind of had a similar question for Victoria. With the edit, like there's a lot of kind of jumping between different moments and events and multiple storylines. Like, how did you come to this way of weaving them all together?
Time takes time. I think like unlocking the film was the hardest part, like getting the film on the right track in a way. And I think that really happened when we figured out how to develop Tad's character, make sure that this film was obviously about Bob and Bob's life and career, but the counter of that is what Tad is experiencing. And then once we kind of unlock that, I think it's sort of really leaning into with Tad in the edit, like this idea of just like refusing to simplify. Like there were so many times like we could have taken out a theme, we could have taken out a layer, there was too much, everyone's saying there's too much, there's too much, too much. But I think like with just like wanting to keep the complexity of the layers and not cutting anything, reordering, reshuffling, refining, yes, but refusing really to simplify, I think has just made the film so much richer.
Yeah, the film is really so capacious for that. I'm also just amazed that so many people on the team were students of Bob and have their own kind of personal experiences. For Yuri, I wonder if there were kind of like challenging conversations between you and Tad or other members of the team where, how did you navigate different kind of experiences with Bob from all these different perspectives as students, as his son, as other community members?
I think it was important in the film to have the less history, more soul piece of it. I think that's the root of the kind of filmmaking that Bob teaches us. Like Tad's like my friend, and then I have to produce him, right? So it is challenging because those two things don't always like exist in the same roles. We definitely had a lot of conversation. I'm sure he got frustrated with me. I get frustrated with him. The producer has to it's the worst job in the world, and simultaneously the best. It's just a really hard thing to do, and then you add all these other layers of personal connection, personal relationships, and then you add in money and time, all the other things that producers worry about. So I wanted to be a friend to my friend who's grieving and going through a major emotional process, and then I was and then I want to finish the film. But he had the same tension, right? I want to finish so that I can enjoy and spend time with my family. So those
They worked through it. They did.
Yeah, no, we did. But that was the biggest, I think, hurdle. Because there were times where I was I'm not really being a great friend right now. And I'm also not being a great producer. It was working through a lot of those things, and I do tend to escape into work, right, and tasks and things to get through. So it was definitely challenging. I was also working on another project at the same time. So I think ultimately the resolution was once we were able to premiere at Sundance and see Bob there and have the whole family there and Ted there, I think we were oh, it took as long as it was supposed to. And that was humbling, right, in a different way, because we were making a film for it recalibrated why we were making the film, why we're here today, with all of you. those reminders were kind of what grounded me, or regrounded me at least in the process, and trusting.
And you know, I think what was great about the team, you know, especially Yuri, even tonight, right? I mean, I think it's kind of like, you know, when you're the director, you kind of feel like the quarterback, but everyone there is there to protect you, right? And I think Yuri being my friend, everyone, you know, Spencer, Lou, Vic, everyone understanding what I'm going through. They did a great job of protecting me so I could process, so I could figure this out. I mean, even like tonight, like Yuri was handled all the tickets, like even an hour before, you know, the screening, you know, she took care of getting the tickets, so I don't have to worry about that. So I could enjoy this night, but that was symbolic of the whole process where they really protected me from, you know, from the bullshit, so I could really focus but also too, I think Yuri is the one that, as a friend, she could be straight up with me, because there was a point where she was like, you know, you're holding on to this film because you're holding on to your dad. And I think that was very true, but I didn't realize that. And, you know, there was a point where I realized that this process was so special, that, you know, because when we were doing the interviews, it was just me and him in his office, there's no crew. So these really intimate conversations, and there was a point where I did realize this is the last time I'm going to work with him, and pretty much I felt like, you know, the longer I could prolong this process of making the film, the longer I could hold on to my dad and this moment that we have. And, you know, it takes, yeah, it's a hard conversation, but it also takes a good friend to recognize that and to be able to just be straight up with you about that and appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. As we're running close to time, I just want to ask if there's a favorite memory that each of you have from working on the film that you'd want to share with the audience.
I mean, for me, I mean, there was a lot, but I think what's recently kind of stuck in my mind. So, you know, before we locked picture, I was, you know, throughout the whole process, I was showing my dad cuts, and you know, he'd be like, "Oh, it's getting there," you know. And then at the end, you know, he's kind of seen it, but I was saying, "Dad, like, what do you want people to walk away with, knowing about your career and what, you know, in your work?" And by this time, he had a kind of hard time talking, and he was like, "Well, it's not really revenge, but it's revenge." And I think that really reminded me also of the fire that he has in him, and that reminded me of what we're going through now. And we're being attacked, our families are being attacked, our countries are being attacked, our organizations are being attacked. And like my dad says, like, we're not going to let them get away with it, right? We're going to remind them that we're going to always fight back. And like my dad really dedicated his career towards getting his revenge in his way. And I think that's inspiring for me at this moment.
I don't have anything nearly as profound.
You also witnessed my dad's tall tales. I would always make fun of, like, my dad, you know, like when he was talking to Prince about, like, we used to keep scorpions and, like, snakes. And I'm like, yeah, you didn't do that, that's not true. And then so I keep on telling them in the edit room, like, my dad just tells me these stories that, you know, like, you've seen the film Big Fish, it's kind of like that. And so in Manzanar, on the way back, my dad's telling this story about how he saw Elvis in Europe in the army. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? And then Yuri was just cracking up. I was like, see?
But we fact checked that. We think it's true. But I think I can't say enjoyed, but the Forest Lawn scene when you visit the Jiangshan and Jichang and Jichang is great.
like, we were like, we have no idea what's gonna happen. Like, you know what I mean? Like, truly, we're like, we're gonna do this, because he said he felt guilty, right? But like, we're like, is he gonna cry? Is he gonna whatever? And then he, you know, he does the thing, where he's like, Hollywood 7:30, you know? And like, at first I was like, this is gold, and then I was like, wait, can we use it? You know, and so, I mean, because just being there, that was like, it wasn't enjoyable, but like, seeing Bob, and then to the very end, like when we got to Sundance, I was in the green room, I was like, Bob, we made it, and he goes, not yet. Because we hadn't actually screamed yet, and he was like, there's still time.
I think for me it's been more of like a kind of growing period for me, which I really appreciate. Like, it's great to work with friends, and especially on something so meaningful, but I think it's like a project that really made me reevaluate like my family values, and like think more about, you know, my parents getting older, and I just really appreciate that as a sort of recheck on myself and kind of tune into that. And I don't think I would be thinking the way I am today without having worked on film. So yeah, it's really important.
That reminds actually to your first question. You know, I think ever since I became a father, I don't know if other people can relate, but I just kind of walked the earth as a dad, and it was so hard for me to actually become a director again, and you know, and I kind of felt that it's almost like, oh, like did I lose it, or like, you know, and I think it really. This project was, there was fun moments, but this project was really hard, but I think it wasn't until kind of me and Victoria kind of sat down in the edit room for, you know, and really started just knocking it out, that it became fun to me. And I think in a way, like it was like, oh, it kind of got back and remembered that I'm also a filmmaker, not just a dad. So I think, you know, I want to thank Victoria, because it became fun when we were, you know, just kind of knocking it out, and started really flowing.
I think that's a really great place to end. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.